Retro wrestling. This is just an idea I'm kicking around. I'll be doing a review of one match from any time period that I can get my hands on the match and take a look at it, get a couple of stills of it, and if I know what the storyline's about or guess what the storyline's about, and I'll tell you what the storyline was and how the wrestling was and what my general thoughts about the entire thing. I want to say this. I am coming up to my 5-year anniversary doing wrestling reviews. And a lot of people did inspire me to do these things. The Sled Daddy really was inspiring me from the Off the Rope show originally, along with Tasteless Tony T, Mr. Ralph, Metal D, and Marvelous Mark. I don't know if anybody remembers the British Fist with MJ and Mr. Parkin. They also gave me a lot of inspiration. And for me to do wrestling reviews, they really gave me some courage to try it. Particularly that was under a lot of stress, and as you know, I have depression. And the first video I did was on Chris Benoit. The reasons why Chris Benoit pretty much took his life, I explained it. And I felt that was one very important video, how I felt that what he had did that was right, what he did what was wrong, and in the end, what it comes out to. If you want to, take a look at it for yourself in my playlist. It's there. But anyway, I was a big Chris Benoit fan. I had his documentary, which I do have it, and I looked at all those matches, and I tried to hunt some down on YouTube as well. I have seen several of them. And there's one match I like, and that is the Super J Cup, done in, what was it, April 16th, I believe, 1994. I don't remember it offhand. I did just look at it, but I forgot the date. It's in 1994, somewhere around April. But anyway, this was about him versus Black Tiger, which was Eddie Guerrero. And at the time, Chris Benoit was known as Wild Pegasus. So this was for the Super J Cup. That's the New Japan Pro Wrestling J Cup. And you would go through a tournament for that. Now, I can tell you this. If you want to see these two guys in their prime, well, I'll take that back. In the very midst about to go into the prime, because this was in the early 90s. It wasn't when they were in the mid-2000s when they really came into their own in their 30s and then going into their 40s when they were really strong in their prime. This is in their early parts, just about to hit their prime. I should say it like that. The match itself, if you can get to see it, is very good. There's no story behind it, unfortunately, because and most of it was in Japanese, so I don't know what was going on between Black Tiger and Wild Pegasus. I know that Wild Pegasus used to be the Pegasus Kid until he lost his match and that mask, and then he became Wild Pegasus without the mask. You can see that signature loss of tooth. But in the end, if you watch this match, it's one of the better matches that you can see in the 90s. Not a lot of selling for super moves because there were no real big super moves. It was mostly wrestling, some high flying, some technical, and I found that to be very, very good. When you really review the match itself, it did tell a pretty good story of how two guys who are very familiar with one another can actually make a match have meaning. They were determined to win that match. They were determined to beat one another and to beat the hell out of one another. I will say this, if you see it, you will not be bored of it. But as a story itself, even though the match really kind of made the story, it's flat. Because you don't know what they were going through in New Japan Pro Wrestling because you couldn't understand Japanese at the time. And since it didn't have subtitles on that particular video, there's no way of knowing everything that the commentators were saying. But in the end, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, that match was easily an 8 for me personally. It was a very good in-between match of high-flying and mostly grappling wrestling. You don't always get good grappling, technical wrestling. You get technical wrestling, but a lot of times the technical wrestling is just sloppy. Or it's oversold, like they have to do so many times, they have to do their signature moves to get them in, instead of actually not using the signature moves until you really need them. That's the reason why I would say it had that in-between kind of feel, where it isn't all about signature moves, but it is about performance. But don't mind me, Take a look at it for yourself. And I hope you enjoy this, maybe one-off of retro wrestling. Please leave me a comment below. Have a good day. Have a good night.